I actually recorded this video and I forgot to turn on my microphone, so I guess we're doing this again. Anyway, keeping my channel active wise, kind of socially, video game wise, psychologically, I'm going to talk about a topic that I've rarely talked about, and that is times when I think it's good to be a nerd, right? Anyway, remember if you like this kind of videos, like, sub, doesn't hurt you if you want to support the channel, blah, 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 right? So, I know I talk a lot of shit about being a nerd nowadays because, if anything, being a nerd nowadays is actually pretty accepted, right? You know what I mean? To give you an example of how accepted it is to be a nerd for so long now, right? So it's always so ridiculous for people to act like they're being persecuted for being a nerd nowadays because, if anything, being a nerd nowadays is actually cool. The nerd nowadays, your regular nerd, your regular social justice warrior, is actually the bully from yesteryear, if fucking anything, really. I mean, it's been for like 10 years, I would say, actually, because I was dying in 2008. Took me about, a year before I could even work out again. Then let's say, I started becoming quotation marks cool again, whatever, right? Even by that, let's say 2010, I was having girls tell me that I was pretending to be a nerd to be cool. Ridiculous, right? That goes to show you. So I'm not impressed when nerds act like they have such a bad life nowadays because, again, the nerd today is the bully of yesteryear. The nerds nowadays are totally bullies, right? For sure, right? I mean, I guess there's different aspects or types of nerds, but roll with me here. So I'm going to talk about times when it's actually cool to be a nerd, though, right? Which I accept, right? And cliche examples that I think in my head would be, I remember when I was going to Japanese class, school, right? And I remember you would see the super kind of nerdy kind of dudes, and you could always tell, right? Because I have clear visualizations of a couple of times when I was going to different like colleges, right? I remember one time before when school was starting, and some kids were asking, fellow students were like asking the teacher some questions before class, and it wasn't like a full on cringe, but it was kind of like a head, like you kind of turn your head like, oh fuck, dude, really? You know what I mean? Like, oh shit, okay, bro. I remember like they'd be like, hey, Miss whatever, blah blah blah. How do I say I'm from hell? How do I tell this person to go to hell? How do I say I'm the hell boy? I'm the hell boy. You're going to hell. Blah blah. And it's kind of like, oh shit, dude. It's like fuck. It's like real nerd. And there'd be like the students. Maybe they were like, instead of saying like denki for electricity or like a light bulb, whatever they're trying to say, right? They would always say hikari for anything electricity or light. So you could tell this was like the video game, dude. Everything was hikari. Any kind of light or electricity was hikari, right? And you're just like, but you want to know what, dude? As cringy as that sounds, right? That's actually a good time to be a nerd, right? And from a certain perspective, I can't hate on it. Fuck, dude, you can look at my YouTube. I have tons of things. You know how I taught myself Japanese? I mean, not that my Japanese is good. My Japanese is pretty terrible, especially now. Especially after the dying stuff happens, you know what I mean? My brain, that's why I lose my train of thought all the time. You know what I mean? But I was teaching myself Japanese by playing dating games, by reading manga, whatever kind of video game shit it might be, right? And that's the best kind of way to be a nerd when you are having fun with a hobby that you enjoy and the hobby is improving yourself. So, as cringy as it might sound, these nerds, you know what I mean? I want to say I'm from hell. I'm the hell boy and you're going to hell. I'm the hell boy and I'm shooting my whatever the fuck, my magic release. I'm from hell and I'm shooting my magic release fireball. What I guess I've never heard anyone say, how do I shoot my magic release fireball? But definitely, how do I go to hell? How do I say I'm the hell boy? Definitely shit like that. But that's a good time to be a nerd because you're killing two birds with one stone. You're enjoying a hobby that you like while improving yourself, right? And even if we think about video games, right, to compare it maybe to more video games per se, I call shit. I'm sure people, and a lot of people gave me shit back in the day because I used to just call shit whatever. Even nowadays, I still call shit weird shit. Nut sack loops, ball sack loops, where the fuck want it, because I'm trying to keep it fun for me. I don't really care about the real name per se. I'm trying to keep it fun for me, right? But people would hate on me for it, right? And and on that same token, now a lot of times a lot of stuff that I used to say back in the day are now actually common phrases, as much as people hate it, right, in the video game community, which is funny, right? But I can say from my perspective as well, there are definitely times when I listen to people talk about video games, and it's like, it's just totally, it's fucking airplane over my head, dude. I have no idea. People are calling shit all sorts of weird things, and it sounds fucking stupid as fuck to me. But at the same time, that's not necessarily bad, because if that's making you enjoy the game, calling it something weird, do whatever the fuck you want to do, right? I think from one perspective, of course, when I've talked about, the destruction of like video games and the nerd community, and the fake everyone needs to be the star quarterback of thing. It's mentally draining to me and like cringy when you hear people. When I've talked about how they've changed video games, and you always hear people say like, "Oh, Clayton says there's no frame data back in the day." I never said that, but it was not. It was not relevant to how the video game was played. You don't talk about frame data in Super Turbo. It's so stupid when you see people try to argue me. You're not fucking smarter than me in a video game, dude. Just stop. I mean, I play video games for fun, and I'm smarter than you, okay? So just stop. You know what I mean? Come on. I don't even play these games, and I've been able to... Show me someone else that can do that. Show me someone else that they can, like, guess how a game's going to work without ever playing it. Ridiculous, right? But they really, when I talk about, they've made the game so focused on cliff notes, the GED, having to pass the GED equivalent of a game. There's like a GED equivalent of a game that says you know what you're talking about now. So when you see people talk at nauseum, like, oh, this move is plus this move is plus this, that's crazy. I know what I'm talking about. I can talk about this, blah, blah, blah. It just is so totally, totally weird to me. But from a certain perspective, I can understand that, you know what, if that's how they enjoy the game, making the game be a math problem, you know what I mean? Only look at the game from a super mathematical point of view, trying to take the fun out of it. If talking about the game that way is fun for them, that's on them, right? But when I talk about the bad way, the bad things about being a nerd, I'm talking about the aspect of when you want to make the game something it isn't, and you want to take the fun out of the game for someone else. You want to, like, and that's the bad part about fighting games particularly, is because fighting games are inherently competitive, right? And so, I've talked about this before in my last vlog about the family aspect of the FGC and how actually I compared myself to... I've never been a part of the FGC family-wise because I was always too... Even when Street Fighter 2 came out, I was too young to be traveling. Not traveling, fuck, I was... Street Fighter 2, man, I was a fucking baby for sure. I was getting driven to places, man... I was really young during those days, but even by the time that I was entering tournaments, people don't get. I could not drive then, right? I couldn't even drive. When I was winning my first tournaments, I couldn't drive. I couldn't drive till after reload. It was ridiculous, right? Like, I was winning all these tournaments before I could even drive, dude, right? So I was never part of the fighting game community because I was never going to a lot of gatherings playing people. I could only go to tournaments and all that stuff if someone would take me, right? So I never had that camaraderie of a fighting game community that wanted to defend me, because I was always an outsider, just some random dude that was good enough to win and beat people while playing for fun, right? But that is a problem when you think about, the family aspect or the camaraderie, I guess, of fighting, is because it is inherently competitive, it brings out the worst in people, right? And, nerds, of course, they want to think that they've been prosecuted for all these years, when if anything, fighting games, and you can watch the vlogs and I go over it in depth, the problem with the nerd is that they realize that just because you're a nerd doesn't mean you're supposed to be good at something. Just because you're a nerd doesn't mean you're supposed to be good at a fighting game, right? There's no, hey, I'm a nerd, I'm supposed to be good. Now the social justice, oh, I'm gay, I've been prosecuted. Like, what was that combo video contest, which was absolutely fucking hilarious, dude. Like I said, and I showed the judges messaged me and told me the contest was going to be held somewhat differently, right? I didn't fucking hack the judges thing. Then all of a sudden the judge is like, oh, well, you're allowed to use loopholes to win. Loopholes? Am I allowed to suck your dick? What the fuck does that mean, dude? I know I'm not part of your pissy fucking bitch-ass group. I beat your family. Get over it. You're not as good as me, okay? But again, what I was getting to, you think that, oh, I'm a nerd, I'm supposed to be good. Look at that one dude, that fucking loser. I'm not even going to say their names because it's absolutely fucking pathetic. They entered a combo competition. Oh, I worked 30 hours on my combo video that you pre-recorded and then put together. which literally means it's tool assisted, doesn't it? Isn't that literally how when you do speed runs, you literally record one thing and then record the next thing, stop, record the next thing, save state, save state, save state. That's what the fuck you did. You said it took you 30 hours to do that? I'm not fucking impressed. Well, I'm sick and I'm a nerd. I'm transgender, whatever the fuck. I cut off my dick. I don't give a fuck. Just because you did this shit doesn't mean you deserve a gold star. I can appreciate you being a nerd. I can appreciate the idea of being a nerd. That's why I try to tell people I'm a nerd. I have no problem saying that I jacked off to hentai. I would probably still jack off to hentai if I wasn't busy busting nuts to real people. Maybe in people. You know what I mean? If I didn't have my daddy issues. If these girls didn't have these fucking daddy issues, right, dude? You know, what am I going to say, right? But, I mean, I probably... If I was more horny, I probably still would. But, you know, the thing is, I have nothing wrong with being a nerd. And I think being a nerd is actually good sometimes. But when you're a delusional nerd, there's a difference between being delusional and bettering yourself, right? Did you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You can be a nerd and better yourself. And you can be a nerd and you can be fucking a nerd in the negative sense. Completely fucking delusional. Does that make sense? Anyway, I just want to say that because that Japanese story I always think is kind of funny. It's not a common story that I've told on stream, but sometimes it gets brought up. And I just try to tell that story because there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. It's good to be a nerd. It's good to talk about games in a nerd, even though I don't like the way that fighting games have gone in terms of becoming a math problem and taking away actual execution and all this kind of stuff. Talking about the game, if it is relevant to how the game is played that way, that's totally fine. If that's why you like the game and that's how you enjoy it. And if that's making you better going over the math problem constantly, that's good. But when you become delusional, like if you're delusional and you're trying to say like, oh, games are so more skillful nowadays. This person's so much better. Oh, blah. Clayton wouldn't win nowadays. Wait, the same people win nowadays that Clayton used to beat. Don't listen to that. Oh, Clayton never did this. Oh, blah, blah, blah. There's a difference between being delusional and enjoying the hobby. That's what I'm trying to get at. Being a nerd is good. Being delusional is not good. And there's a lot of fucking mental cases in the community. Anyway. Remember, if you like these videos, if you leave a silly comment, that's good. Or like, sub, subscribe, donate, whatever you want to do. I appreciate it. I know not a lot of video games lately because I haven't actually played video games in maybe a few days. Like I said, a few days maybe? When did I play maybe? Maybe it's been a few days, I guess, if it's like I said. I don't actually play video games all the time, so, excuse me. So, and I just don't really have anything to do in video games right now, so it's hard to force myself. But I know fragrance videos, you just got to deal with it, dude. If you want to support my channel, you can. Thanks for watching.